Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and we're here with my first monthly reading wrap-up of 2025. I read a total of 8 books this month and we're going to talk about my thoughts on all of them and then my TBR for February. So, first book that I finished in 2025 on the New Year's Day. I wasn't really feeling like doing anything, so I literally just sat and read this book in like one sitting, and that is A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. 2024 was the year that I discovered T. Kingfisher and I'm obsessed with her books. They're so good. This one I originally gave it 4.5 stars, but since reading it I think I've decided it's a 5-star. We started the year off with a 5-star book, which was a great way to start the year, but this one is a retelling of the Brothers Grimm story, The Goose Girl. Basically, you're following this girl whose mom is a sorceress and she is super manipulative and dangerous. And her mom basically moves her into this house because she's trying to get this guy to fall in love with her so that she can take his money, essentially. And so you're following this girl as she tries to deal with the fact that her mom is doing this and tries to protect some of the people from her mom. And it gets really dark, as Brother Grimm's fairy tales tend to. I feel like I've heard a lot of people calling this a dark retelling of it, but like, how do you really get darker than the original Brothers Grimm story? I don't know if it's darker, but it's definitely on par. So dark, spooky, very fun, a great plot, funky characters. I always love her characters so much, but that is A Sorceress Comes to Call. I am obsessed with it and I've been just wanting to find a book that has a similar feel to it pretty much since I read it. So if you have any suggestions, if you've read this one, of books that have similar vibes but aren't like either super gory, this one got a little bit much sometimes, or like have a lot of inappropriate content, let me know. And then the next book that I finished in January was The Search for Wendla by Toni Dieter-Lietzsche. Sorry, a lot of these books are really reflective of the light, but this one is a reread for me. This is one of my favorite series from when I was a kid. I've actually read this book 3 times now, and I just love it so much. This one's also a 5-star book for me. I just reread it all the time. I think that it is just the most fun world. It's a sci-fi book where basically you're following this girl who has been raised by a robot in this underground lab, and then their lab gets attacked, or their sanctuary is what they call it, and she gets put out onto this alien world with all of these crazy creatures and stuff, and you're just watching her try to survive and figure out her place in this world full of aliens. So it's really fun. It goes from there. There are also a lot of really cool illustrations. It is illustrated by the author, and so you have all of these really cool pictures at the beginning of every chapter, and then you also have illustrations just as you go through that are smaller. So that really adds a lot to the series. Okay, and then I started reading books for a video that will have gone up just before this one, which is reading books that I've been avoiding. And the first one that I read for that video is The Couple Next Door by Shari Lapena. I'm not really sure how to say that one, but this one is a mystery thriller where basically there's this couple and their infant gets kidnapped from its crib and you're following along what happened. It's a very interesting mystery thriller because you jump around POVs a lot and you're not necessarily following the detective the whole book, so it gets really weird, and then sometimes it'll just like all of a sudden a new POV will pop up that wasn't there before. So I don't know, I didn't love it, but it was definitely a page turner and definitely had a lot of plots that you don't typically see in thriller books. Like, I don't think I've ever seen an infant get kidnapped in a thriller that I've read, so that was interesting, but I gave it 3 stars. And then I finished Children of Dune. This is book 3 in the Dune series. I am not the hugest Dune fan to begin with. The first book was fine, like it was good. The second book was weird and I didn't enjoy it. The third book was like, meh. So that's where I stand. I also gave this one 3 stars. I don't know if it was quite there, but it just gets really confusing and it's just kind of hard to figure out what exactly the plot is, and there's so many crazy religion deep dive things. Like, he really spent a lot of time creating this world and the religions and the philosophies, and that takes a bit more priority than the plot necessarily does. So as somebody who mostly reads for the plot, these books just are a little bit hard for me to get through. And I think I'm gonna be done reading Dune. For now, I don't know that I have the need to continue the series. And then the last book that I finished in that video is 2-3 Mini Vietnams. This is a collection of essays about the US's involvement in Southeast Asia, specifically surrounding the Vietnam War, but what they were doing in the other countries in the area at the time. It is a very interesting collection of books. This one, or of essays. This one took me a very long time to read because I had started reading it and then it got packed up when we were moving at one point, and then a couple years later I finally got that box out and decided to finish it. But my favorite part of it was when it deep dive. There was a whole section of essays about the African American experience in the Vietnam War, which was very fascinating. There was like 2 or 3. One of them was a speech by Martin Luther King Jr. Loved that part. But yeah, overall, very interesting, very eye-opening. Not things that really get talked about that much, at least if you live in the US. So if you want a very eye-opening book about the Vietnam War and surrounding topics, it was a good one. I would recommend. And then we reached the point in the month where I pretty much started solely reading books from Libby because I recently got the Libby app set up and I've been doing it audiobooks and reading on Jacob's Kindle, which is my first time trying reading with a Kindle. So a few of these last 3 books that I finished this month were all through the Libby app because they were ones that happened to be available. But the first one, I wanted to just test out the Kindle and see if I liked it. So I picked a nice short book and I was really just feeling like a T. Kingfisher book, but I don't want to burn through her books so fast. I want to save some of them for, like, I kind of want to spread it out. So I did some Googling to see if I can find a book that gave T. Kingfisher vibes, but wasn't by her. And so one of the things that I found on Reddit was the Penric's Demon series by Lois McMaster Bujold, something like that. First one is, oh, I guess it's the Penric and Desdemona series, but this is a series of short stories that basically you're following this guy who accidentally ends up with a demon in him. He's not like possessed, he's like interacting with it. It's very like Venom-esque. I've never seen that movie, but it reminds me of that from what I've known from the trailers, except it doesn't like come out. Anyways, but and then you're basically following how it changes his life, essentially. Again, it's only like 100 pages. They're short stories, so I've only finished the first one. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was really fun. It definitely has a little bit of that witty humor. I can see why people would suggest it for fans of T. Kingfisher. That being said, I don't feel like it kept up the funniness so strongly through the whole book. It definitely kind of came and went depending on the part of the book. The first part was very funny, then it kind of stopped, and then it got a little funnier at the end. But and there were also a couple of things that, I don't know, it wasn't really spice, but it was like a couple weird things like that it was literally like a page. But that definitely, I was like, oh, did we need to go there? So I don't know. I did enjoy it. I do think I'm going to continue the series at some point. I'll probably just read a book here and there from it whenever I'm just wanting a short, quick read. I think that these ones could be fun. And then the next book that I read is for a video that is actually coming out later. So you'll see that one with my more in-depth thoughts. But that is The Girls I've Been by Tessa Sharp. This one I struggled with. I gave it 2.75 stars. It is marketed as a YA mystery thriller. And you're following this girl whose mom is a con artist and now she's stuck in a bank and she has to utilize all of her skills as a con artist in order to get out of it. That's the premise and that's how it's marketed. This book is like, it does those things, but that's not the main part of the book. I would say this is much more of a like lit fic coming of age book that happens to also have those plot lines. It also does not qualify as YA in my mind. Just because the main characters are in high school does not mean it is a YA book content wise. There is a lot of swearing, a lot of very strong language. There is a lot of really heavy triggering topics that are delved deeply into. Pretty much every type of abuse you can think of is like a main plot point in this book. And there is also, it gets very graphic and gruesome as far as like blood and gore and stuff like that. So I don't know, content wise, I would not say this is a YA book at all. Don't go into it if you're looking for a thriller. I felt like the thriller plotline part was a little underwhelming. and it definitely was more of like a, we're just trying to process our trauma together through the like format of a thriller, but it was much more about these three majorly traumatized teenagers who happen to be friends trying to like sort through all their trauma with each other, and that's really what the book was. So if you go into it thinking of it as a thriller like I did, I don't know that it's gonna deliver if you read a lot of thriller books. Maybe it's good for people who typically read lit fic and want like a little bit of a thriller twist to their lit fic, but not if you're going into it for a thriller. And definitely not YA in my books. So there's that one. And then the last book that I read in January, I just barely finished today, and that is The Ruins of Gorlin, which is Ranger's Apprentice #1. I started trying to read this series when I was a kid, and I got through like book 1, maybe 2, and then I ended up stopping reading because it was in like peak Ranger's Apprentice. Everybody's obsessed with it. You could not get the other books from the library, and I was just impatient, so I quit reading. I read the first book or two of the Brother Band Chronicles too. Same thing happened, couldn't get the rest of the series, so I just kind of stopped. So I want to read the whole series because I remember really liking it. So I got it off in the library. I've been wanting to read these books for a while, but I didn't want to buy the whole series because it is extensive. There are a lot of books in this series. So I felt like the library was the perfect place to get this one. So I got it on Libby, read it. They're super fast paced. They're definitely like kids books, but I feel like there's some fun characters. They just really fit the need if you want like a medieval Europe, knights, rangers. It's fun. Those are all of the books that I read in January. So really quickly before we completely lose my light, I wanted to go through my TBR for February. The first book on the TBR, and the one that I'm probably going to start tonight, is Foul Lady Fortune by Chloe Gong. This one's also going to be in a reading vlog coming up soon, so you will be able to see my in-depth thoughts on this one. But this is book 3 or book 1, depending on how you look at it, of the Secret Shanghai series. It's 2 duologies and then like a short story. So this is the first book of the second duology, but it's the 3rd book total in the series. I'm very interested to see where this one goes. It's, if you don't know, the original duology is the These Violent Delights Are Violent Ends series, or duology, and that one's based off of Romeo and Juliet, set in 1920s, 30s Shanghai. And this one follows some of those characters from my understanding, but we're doing a retelling of a different Shakespeare something. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, and I don't know the story, so it'll be interesting to see one where it's maybe a little less predictable because I don't know the source material that it's based off of. But I'm very interested to see where we go with these characters and who all ends up in this book. I definitely have some characters that I liked more than others when it came to side characters, and I don't know that the main one is my favorite, but I'm hoping that some of my favorite characters show back up. And then the next book is Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz. Again, this one's going to be in a video coming up fairly soon. This one, I don't know a ton about it, but I have listened to the audiobooks of the Hawthorne and Horowitz story series. I'm all the way caught up on that, and I like them. The series is going downhill for me, but I'm interested to see another book by the author. And this one sounds very interesting. I think it's like a crime writer, or no, so you're following a famous crime writer and his editor, and then I think his editor starts to see some similarities between the books he's writing and some real life crimes that are happening, and so she starts to wonder if maybe he's more than just an author and these aren't so totally fictional books. So I'm very interested to see how I feel about this one and if I like this author in a different series. And then the last physical book that is on my TBR for February is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I've heard a lot of things, honestly kind of mixed reviews about this online, and I'm very interested to try it out. I found it at a thrift store, otherwise I don't know that I would have picked it up, so it's not one that I've like been dying to read, but a lot of people have said that it's a really good winter read, so I want to read it while it's still cold and sort of snowy. Honestly, a lot of our snow is kind of melted, but this one feels like one that I need to get done before we get into spring, so I'm hoping to finish this one in February. And then I do have a couple of books that I want to do or read digitally this month. The first one is The Raven Boys. That one is the first book in the Raven Boys series, or the Raven Cycle, I think might be what it's called. I've heard great things about it. And I got it as an audiobook on Libby, so I've been listening to it. I'm not quite Am I what, like a 30%? Let me see. I'm currently about 40% through the book, so definitely going to be finishing it in February, and I'm really loving it so far. I'm excited to see where it's going. Really, we haven't gotten too far into the plot. It's kind of slow getting going on it, but I'm hoping now that we've kind of set this basis, we know all the characters, that it kind of starts to pick up. And then because I'm already almost halfway through that book, I know I'm gonna want at least one other audiobook, so I do want to listen to Artificial Condition. This one is book 2 in the Murderbot series. I listened to the first one sometime last year and I liked it. It was fine. It wasn't anything special. It's another series completely made up of novellas about this like killer robot that has hijacked its system and just wants to watch like reality TV shows. So it sounds really interesting. It's kind of funny, but I do want to continue reading through those, and they are on Audible Plus, I believe, still. So I want to work through those, and I don't honestly listen to that many audiobooks, so having a short one is kind of nice every once in a while so I can get through it quick. But those are the 2 audiobooks. And then I do want to try and see if I can get from Libby the second Ranger's Apprentice book and just read one of those every once in a while. So that one is called The Burning Bridge. That's book 2, and we'll just keep working through that series. I'm sure I can get that one on the Libby app and read it on the Kindle. But that is the end of this video. That is all of the books that I'm hoping to read in February. Let me know what books are on your February TBR and if you have any recommendations for me. But with that all being said, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one very soon. Bye.